Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the third episode of Brum Tech Tapas. I'm Dan, and I'm going to be your host for this evening. We like to describe Brum Tech Tapas as bite-sized culture from Birmingham's community scene. We showcase amazing people and initiatives from across the region. The tech part is because Brum Tech Tapas is brought to you by us, Jump24, a Birmingham tech business. So before we kick off, I've just got a few housekeeping notes I'd like to take care of. Firstly, we have a code of conduct for this event. The too long didn't read of this is be nice to each other. If you do notice anyone not playing nice in our chat room, please flag it with one of our moderators who'll be keeping an eye out anyway. The chat room is there for participation, so please get stuck in. If you have any feedback or comments about the event or speaker suggestions, you can share your thoughts in the chat room or on Instagram and Twitter using the hashtag BrumTechTapas. There's time for Q&A after each talk, so post your questions in the chat room and we'll make sure we get them asked to the speakers. So get involved in the chat and let's get this started. On to our speakers. In this installment, we'll be exploring themes of identity, culture, and community resource. First up, I'd like to thank and welcome John Searle, founder of Cosimo Art, a platform for buying and selling its users' artistic creations. On Instagram, John describes himself as a northerner, honorary Brummie, art nerd, and football nut, and he's here tonight to talk to us about identity, about industry and identity. Please welcome John.
Hi everyone.
Hi John.
Shall I crack on, or we could go? Awesome. So when I was invited to come and speak, I thought it'd be kind of fun to take a little chance to explore my relationship with Birmingham. As has just been said, I'm from here originally. I'm from kind of up in the Lake District, and Birmingham, I think, is a really great place to be, but I've not really had the chance since I've been here the last 5 or 6 years to really delve into why. I think that's why I thought that would be kind of a fun place to kick things off with this talk. So, like I say, I moved here about 6 years ago to study history of art. Is what I did for my bachelor's and my master's. But the reality was that I only ended up here because the sorting hat that is UCAS didn't let me go to Edinburgh, which had been my first choice, thanks to a few dodgy A-level results on my part. But thankfully, since I arrived in Birmingham, low expectations, I would say, as you will kind of come on to hear in a minute. I was really shocked by how much I loved the city and that's why I kind of decided to hang around since I graduated. And I've always really loved the kind of unique feel that this place has, and I've really come to love. But like I said, I've always thought about this, but I've never really actually had the chance to look into why it is. So I wanted to kind of delve into that with you guys tonight. So with my background being art history, and I've always had a bit of an interest in iconography, I thought a good place to start with exploring what it is that makes up Birmingham's identity and what it is that I love about it. A good place to start would be with the crest of Birmingham, or the coat of arms. It's just a sort of artistic artifact that I've always found interesting when walking around the city, when I've seen it. And as you'll see through the presentation, I think what's particularly cool about the coat of arms is that although it was devised in the 1830s, it's still very relevant to the makeup of the city today. Now, not a focus on the kind of slightly overdone forward motto at the bottom, which every project in the city is always named after. But I want to focus on the two figures either side of the crest. The man represents industry and the woman represents art. And these are obviously two of the city's kind of most proud and greatest exports. But what I've been trying to establish and delve into a bit is what's the relationship between these two in terms of how the city's kind of culture is made up. And what I found is that it's not always been the case that there's been great harmony between art and industry in the city, but the times when there have been are generally when the city does best. So I think it's worth exploring this so we can think about how we can manage this as a community and a city going forward. But I kind of want to bring you back into my kind of own personal story with the city now. In this picture, I chose because it kind of sums up what my perception of Brum as a lowly northerner was before I moved here. I kind of thought the city was just grey skies and grey tower blocks, with the backdrop of even more grey skies and more grey tower blocks, and I didn't know as much else to it. I'm glad to say that I was fairly wrong, but there are elements of that is still true about Birmingham. And I think what's interesting is that although there's a noble element to what the architecture of the 60s and brutalism and all that sort of stuff, the city planning defined a lot of the city's image. That was quite a noble thing. It's never made for a particularly attractive or welcoming view for particularly outsiders. So this was kind of always where I thought Brum would probably be pretty boring, pretty dull, and there won't be much to it. And like I said, there's a little bit of that still hangs around. So hopefully, as you'll see, we're kind of moving on from that. And if you are a fan of the old brutalist stuff, as I learn a lot of people are, close your ears now, because I was actually pretty happy to see the old library go not long after I'd arrived. I know that might be quite a controversial thing to say, particularly as an outsider. But I think if we look at what's there now in terms of paradise, I think that's what the area is called now, which is a bit cheesy, but it's a really bright and open, pleasant place to be. And the city centre, I think, feels increasingly vibrant, accessible. It's really bright and creative. And I think there's a real sense that there's a home for art, business, technology, innovation, and all these things that we like to think encapsulate Birmingham, which I think aptly kind of reflects the essence of the city that was originally being portrayed in the city's crest. But I also think it's interesting that city's gone through these kind of regenerations and reimaginations several times before, and particularly during the Victorian era, which I'm going to kind of delve into here, relating particularly to an essay by Roy Hartnell, which hopefully I think the guys are going to share around afterwards. But you'll see a few quotes relating to this regeneration, and I'm going to basically paraphrase some of his research. So I'd recommend you go and look at his stuff in more detail. But I want to show that the way the city is changing now is very similar to what's happened before. And I think it's important to look at what happened then and how we can relate that to what's going on now. So the city was in a sort of similar state of confusion, I would say, at the start of the Victorian era. And the essayist Thomas Carlyle said of the city that Birmingham was pitiful enough, a mean congery of bricks, the streets ill-built, and torrents of thick smoke are issuing from 1,000 funnels, which isn't a particularly ringing endorsement. And I think, like I say, there's remnants of that I think still, in a different way, resonate today, particularly with, as you can see, the Queensway. I literally lived on Queensway a couple of years ago, and I think it's a prime suspect for some of the issues with the city in terms of the perception that was there in the early 1800s that I think can still be found in some ways today, like I said, through a different kind of guise. But by the 1880s, what's really cool is that people felt that Birmingham had really kind of turned around. They'd kind of done a whole flip. And journalists like Alfred Johnson were saying things like, far from being the centre and hotbed for everything that's inartistic and ugly, the Birmingham today is perhaps the most artistic town in England. So that's quite a transformation. And it's really interesting if you kind of go into it as to how that kind of came about. And because of this transformation, the city became kind of known as the workshop of the world and the Florence of the North, because it's a cultural hotbed for industry and art. And I think, I'm not going to labour on the point, but I hope to say them talking about the Florence of the North in terms of Northern Europe and not Northern England, because Stoke is where the North starts, not Birmingham. But anyway, I think this is what's really cool about this is it's a really interesting tagline for the city that I think actually would be something that politicians of today would really aspire for and be very happy to have associated with the city. But what's what I've kind of found is that it didn't just suddenly emerge. It wasn't just coincidence that the art and the industry kind of emerged as this kind of flourishing, scene where things were going on. There were real concerted efforts to enable it, and that really involved collaboration between art and industry. And as the Heart and details, the wealthy kind of middle classes, whose successes had come off the back of the Industrial Revolution, they patronised the arts and sponsored organisations, all of which you can pretty much see in this picture, actually, apart from the RBSA, which was not far away at the time, but there was the BMI, the Royal Birmingham Society of Artists, Birmingham Museum and Art Gallery, the Birmingham School of Art, and all these places they worked closely with these industry leaders, but they also enabled artists like William Morris and Edward Burne-Jones to make artistic successes. And they also encouraged them to rub off on the manufacturing in turn. So they partnered up to educate up-and-coming product designers and architects as well, to kind of keep this cycle of innovation and beautiful design as well moving forward. So in turn, this kind of then drew in the likes of Charles Dickens and Camille Pissarro, who came to the city to visit and who loved it at this time, and they wanted to spend their time in the city. So it creates this really cool kind of virtuous loop of art, inspiration, success, innovation, and business and art are both working hand in hand to deliver those. But the sad thing was that then, as is always the case with Boston boom, the economic conditions eventually tightened, and the artists were kind of kicked out of their spots at positions of influence in these sorts of spheres. And when the industry leaders let them go to the side, they turned to the councils and the public funding bodies, who were also too scared to back the creators as well, which is something I think we can see at times today. So as the collaboration and innovation ground to a halt, so did the kind of outward image to the city as a real creative, exciting and dynamic place, both in terms of industry and art. So I kind of wanted to see how we can avoid falling into the same traps. And I think if you look at the city now, where there's so much vibrancy and real kind of boom in the cultural and creative industries, I think it's something that those artists and patrons of the art in Victorian times would be really proud of. I think if you look at the stuff we've had recently, including the show for local artists Icon, some of the great public art installations that are going up at the moment, the street art in Digbirth with the likes of Focke-Wulf, who is a previous Brum Tech Tapas speaker, and the Birmingham Festival and Commonwealth Games, which are coming up, are also going to be providing a huge amount of commissions for artists as well. But in a similar way to how Victorians manage this, I think we need to be concerted in our efforts to maintain that relationship between business and art, both now while there's the opportunities here, but also in the future as well. So to bring it kind of back full circle, kind of to argue kind of what's my point. But I think what I'm trying to say is that, but if we look back, then the most vibrant times are times when the successes of its businesses have directly enabled art scenes to flourish and artists to flourish. And as a result, we should really try and look to do the same where possible today. Businesses, both big and small, I really emphasize that I don't think it's just something that big businesses should be doing. I think there's room for small businesses to do the same. Should seek out opportunities to work with creatives and artists in particular, because combined the successes will kind of, I think, inevitably lead to great products, fun experiences, and generally just really nice places to be, to live and exist. And it's important as well that the city continues to kind of look outwardly, not just forward. So you can't really escape staying forward with Birmingham, but in terms of talking about the future, but we really need to keep looking outward. We need to bring in those figures like the sort of Dickenses and the Pissarros, who were world-renowned cultural figures at that time, and bring them into the city, and not just necessarily have our own stuff, but feed off external stuff as well as bringing in those real kind of titans of industry now, as financial services, Goldman Sachs, HSBCs. We really need to kind of bring in everything if we're really going to kind of make Birmingham the workshop of the world and the Florence of the North again. So I think the reality is that industry is what brings people to Birmingham, but art's what can make them stay. So I think what's great about Birmingham, what I love about it, is it's a place with a proud history of art and industry. There's a really exciting present, I think, in terms of where we're at now, and a very promising future. Which, if you look, I think, at places like Manchester, Leeds, Newcastle, they're really great cities, but there's not quite the same crucible, I don't think, of things going on at the moment. But I think most of all, let's say, is that Birmingham's at its best when it does the things that it does best, art and industry together. So that is me. So thanks very much for listening.
Thanks for that, John. I think we've got a couple of questions. I just want to line up.
Cool. Fire away.
So what role do you think institutions play in the modern development of the city's cultural landscape?
So I think, so if I go back to Icon, for example, I think they have a really great position because they've got a great platform. They're a globally renowned institution. And they have done, in the last year, they've done some good things to work with local artists. I think what is important is that it doesn't just stay small scale, and it has to be sustained. I think what artists did with that show was brilliant, but I think it's something that needs to happen in some form every year, almost like you have in London with the Royal Society, the Royal Academy of Artists, the RAs on the show. And I think that's where things really become powerful, is when they're sustained and it's not just tokenistic in a way. So places like Icon, BMAG, it's great that they're working with local artists in particular. But I think there has to be a kind of sustained and concerted effort to make things long term rather than just short term fixes.
Excellent. Okay. We've got one more question from Stuart Langridge. What's needed most to maintain and improve the art and industrial scenes? Participation from people here, government funding, more people and companies coming from elsewhere, or something else?
I think, to be honest, I genuinely think it's stuff like this. And what I really love about the Brum Tech Tapas idea is that it's bringing together creative people, techie people, people from all sorts of different industries. And that's not something I think happens enough in Birmingham. Now, part of this I would actually say is going back to the makeup of the city. I think it's geographic. Like, I think, you've got art in Big Berth and, tech sort of around Ice Centrum or whatever, and all these different little pockets. So I think we need to be better at bringing together people from different backgrounds, about bringing together those artists and those people in industry and finding opportunities to link them up. Because in my experience, people are willing to work with each other, and that you don't have to necessarily rely on the public funding or on specific setup schemes. People just have to mix, and they'll naturally create those opportunities for each other. So I think it's giving more airtime, I suppose, or to the different voices, and helping connect people and making those connections a lot easier, so that people can then make the most of those opportunities and those networks.
Excellent. Okay, well, I want to say a big thanks for coming on. And it's really a really great talk, and some of those subjects. I think we got some of the things you mentioned, particularly some of those quotes I really loved. The artist city is the most beautiful art city in all of England. I mean, I know it pertained to that period of time, but it would be great, like you said, to kind of bring that back again.
Yeah, I think it feels a bit like that now. That's what I really love, is that it does feel like we're moving in that direction, and I think that's what I find so kind of exciting. I feel like at points I was a bit harsh on Birmingham in that, but I think it's because I really love the atmosphere of the place, and I think if we keep building on this vibe, for want of a better word, I think we can really do some cool stuff as a city.
I agree. So again, thanks again for coming on. And obviously, good luck with Cosmo, and hope that the project goes well with that.
Cheers. Thanks very much.
So next up, I'd like to welcome Sophie Watson from the Borrow Shop. So this is one of Jewry Quarter's newest establishments. She's here to share her thoughts on borrowing for social and environmental good.
Hi, thanks Dan, and thanks for inviting me tonight. It's great to be here. I'm going to assume my screen is sharing, so I'm just going to go straight into it. So yeah, my name's Sophie and I'm the founder of the Borrow Shop. As Dan said, we've just opened in the Jewry Quarter. I think we've been open for just under 2 months now, so still really new, still learning lots of stuff. So yeah, before I move on, I just want to clarify, because I've had lots of questions about this, that our house milk is actually oat, not cat. So I just wanted to clarify that yeah, no cats are harmed in the making of my coffee. So I'm going to kind of talk to you about what the Borrow Shop is, why it is a thing, and the environmental good, the social good, and then obviously we've got some time for questions. So I'll just read this quote. So people don't want to buy drills, they want holes. I think it's a really interesting quote, and it's come from an advertiser in the 1940s, obviously from the perspective of wanting to sell things to people. But I think it's really important to look at this in a sustainability mind. So think of all the things you have in your house that you don't actually want, but you need. So a ladder is a really good example of this. You don't really want to have a ladder in your garage or in your home. It's big, it's expensive, it's a pain in the ass. But you need it occasionally to kind of get up high and do things. And yeah, that's what this quote is about. Not needing the stuff, you just need the outcome. So the drill is a really interesting one, because I would say most homes across the UK own a drill. You buy it, you maybe use it for a project, and then it goes away in the cupboard for a year or two. You bring it back out, and it basically just sits in the cupboard for a long, long time. There's an interesting stat that the average drill is used somewhere between 8 to 20 minutes. It's a little bit debated in its entire lifetime. So I don't know, if you have a drill for 5 to 10 years and it's used 8 minutes, it's just a complete waste of resources, waste of money, waste of space. Just a huge kind of missed potential. So that's kind of what kind of drove me to start the Borrow Shop. It's just using our resources a little bit better. So we are 3 things. We are a library of things, and we also sell eco-friendly homewares and gifts and coffee and delicious vegan bakes. So I'll firstly explain kind of the library of things element, and then I'll go into the other 2 strands. So it should be kind of showing you the items we have. I think we have around 35 at the moment, and I'm kind of looking to expand that as we go through the months and years. But we've got everything from ladders, tools, airbeds, folding chairs, kind of anything you can think of in a domestic setting that you could possibly need. I don't know, like one to 3 times a year. You don't need all the time. You don't have the space to store. It's expensive to buy, that kind of stuff. And they kind of loosely fall into 5 categories. So we've got cleaning, DIY, entertaining, hobbies, and utilities. So there's some really boring stuff, moving crates, folding sack trolley, that kind of stuff. And then there's some more interesting and fun things for when you've got friends over: pasta machine, a speaker, sewing machine. Yeah, there's lots of stuff. I'll stop listing them now. So yeah, the idea is that so essentially we are a hire shop. That's kind of the best way to think of it. We own the items. They're stored in our basement in our shop, and you can hire them from kind of anywhere from 24 hours to 2-3 weeks. Although most things are kind of hired from 1 to 3 days, because as I said, the stuff you don't need all the time. And everything is done online. Most things are about the price of about 10% of the RRP, so it's cheap to the user. And yeah, we store, maintain, and look after the items. And then moving on, we also have our eco-friendly homewares and gifts. So there's a real kind of sustainability theme throughout all of the things we're doing. The bottom left is a picture of our shop. So all our prints are kind of from local artists. There's notebooks that are made from recycled materials. In the bottom right there, we've got like a little library, which is basically free books. You can come, bring one, take one away, whatever you want. Yeah. And then we've got like a bit of a zero waste corner. So things to promote more of a kind of environmentally friendly lifestyle. So glass jars, on the go lunch boxes, bottles, that kind of stuff. I also think the top right, there's the pink and grey cutlery there. And I think that's a really interesting product because it's made with rice husk, which is basically a product that's it's left over when rice is produced, and it's usually just left in the fields to burn, and it emits a lot of CO2 into the atmosphere. So this company have found a way to kind of use those rice husks and make a product that also stops people using single plastic. So yeah, I think it's a really cool product. It's that kind of stuff that we're selling there. And then, yeah, so we've got some delicious vegan bakes, coffees, hot drinks. Everything's vegan for kind of a sustainability. It kind of goes with our ethos. I'm vegan. It's kind of just goes hand in hand. Yeah, and the cookies and stuff is baked by local bakers. Really keen to promote local people as well. So that's kind of what we're doing. And then I'm going to go into the why. So I'll go firstly into the environmental good. So as a country, we are really, really bad at buying stuff that just ends up in landfill. So this graph shows that we are actually the second worst in the world per capita for electronic waste being generated. So 23.9 kilos on average per person in the UK is kind of just waste every year. I was really surprised to see that Norway is the top. I'm not sure why that is. Yeah, but we're coming above the US, above China. We're well above the EU average and even the global average. So yeah, we have a real problem with kind of getting rid of stuff. And as I said before, like the resources to make this stuff is really, it's used, lots of resources are used to make the items. And once they're there, they need to be used. So the picture on the right, the landfill, that's a picture from Indonesia. It's just a huge, it's disgusting, isn't it? It's just lots of rubbish. You can see a man in the front with like a green bag on his back, and he's sorting through it. And this kind of creates massive problems for local communities. Lots of our rubbish is shipped overseas to be dealt with and recycled. Lots of it ends up in landfill. And this is a problem for many reasons, but kind of the main two is that toxic substances leak into the soil and water, which has massive impacts on food growing, drinking water, kind of just all facets of life. Lead and mercury and all sorts of horrible things are like leaked into everyday life. And the other thing is that when these things end up in landfill, we're losing non-renewable resources such as gold and aluminium, silver, all of that we are essentially just burying and we're never going to get back. Eventually it will just run out. So we need to move more from a linear economy to the recycling and circular economies. So the traditional way that businesses operate is they make something, consumer buys it, uses it, ends up in landfill, and we have the problem on the right. So we're moving towards more of a recycling economy, especially in the last kind of couple of decades. Recycling is much more popular. If you think of like paper is a good one. High grade paper can be recycled a few times down to kind of recycled notebooks and then down to tissue paper, but eventually it does end up in the bin. It just slows down the process. And then the circular economy is all about like a true circular economy is when there's no waste at all, which obviously is quite hard, and it's a really lofty goal, but it's really important for lots of businesses to try and do this as much as possible. So with our borrowing element, if 50 people need a drill in the community and they all go out and buy one, that's 50 times the resources of us having one that everybody can use. Yeah, taking it back to kind of that 8 to 20 minute stat, it just makes sense for us to reduce the impact overall and kind of share things as a community. And I've also trying to implement circular economy into our actual shop. So for example, our coffee grounds, most of them are recycled into eco-logs that it's much better to burn in the environment. And then we've also just signed up for our coffee grounds to go to Scrubby, which is a Birmingham-based coffee face scrub company. It's really cool. They're using coffee grounds from lots of cafes across Birmingham mixed with kind of essential oils and all that. It's a really good product. So yeah, check them out on Instagram. So that's a really good example. And then also, I've been creating cactus cans for several years now. And essentially they're just cans that I've drank the beer and use them as a planter for cactus. So at the moment, if you're kind of local to the Joy Quarter, you bring me 5 of your empty cans. It doesn't have to be beer, anything will do that's a bit funky. I'll give you a free coffee. I can use them to create cactus cans, and it's a kind of a win-win for both of us. And then moving on to the social good, the Borough Shop operates as a social enterprise. So as you can see on this graph, it sits somewhere between kind of a standard business for profit and a charity. And what that means, I'm sure many of you are aware, is that we're not reliant on grant funding, donations, volunteers to run. So we're not like a charity in that sense. We aim to generate profit like a traditional business, but then 50% of that profit is donated to local charities, organisations. Yeah, I think that's something really important when I was starting the business, to kind of give back to local community. So 2 of the charities I'm thinking of making donations to are Trees for Cities, kind of obvious what they do, and Cypher Fireside, they're doing great things with people in vulnerable living situations, homeless people. Yeah, so there's about 10 to 12 libraries of things across the UK, and all of them, I think, are either a self-standing charity or they are kind of part of a bigger charity, and they're very reliant on big grants to run, donations, volunteers. So that's kind of why the coffee and the cakes and the homewares come in. That's why we do a lot of stuff in a very small space. It balances it out so that we're able to be self-sufficient. And yeah, so this is the front of our shop. We are in the Joy Quarter on Northwood Street, which is, if any of you know Otto Pizza, if you don't, check them out. But we're in the same building, just around the corner on Northwood Street. You scan the QR code there, that'll take you to our website. And we are on Instagram at The Borough Shop and Facebook and Twitter at The Borough Shop JQ.
Cool. Thanks for that, Sophie. Have we got any questions? Seen a couple come in. So one from Maeve. What's been the most popular item borrowed so far?
The carpet cleaner by far. Everybody has disgusting carpets. So even if you think they're clean, they're absolutely not. Yeah, people have been cleaning their sofas with it, rugs. You can do the inside of your car. Like it's not just carpets. Yeah, that's probably the most popular. And then secondly, the airbed has been surprisingly popular. I think people having friends over that don't have a spare room with a spare bed. I think lots of people have turned spare rooms into offices recently, so they've got rid of beds potentially. Yeah, they're the 2 most popular so far.
Interesting. I think I'll have to pop over and grab that one. Actually, I think it might be worth borrowing that as well. Have we got any more questions coming in? Yep. So Stuart's asking another question. The Borough Shop is actually self-sustaining. It pays your wages.
It will pay my wages at some point. Yeah, no, we've only been operating kind of 6-7 weeks, so I'm not officially paying a wage so far. And it is just me, but it's self-sustaining and all other. Yeah, we actually crowdfunded to get it up and running, mixed with personal savings. So that was really cool. Very thankful to everyone who donated. yes, it is self-sustaining. There's no kind of grants going forward. Yeah.
Awesome. Any more? I saw. So, what are the future plans then for the bottle shop? What do you see sort of going forward?
So I think just bigger everything. So I would like a bigger space. Our shop is very small, and we've got like a large basement for storage. I think this is kind of further down the line. I would love to have a bigger space where we could have more seats in our cafe, just more of a kind of hub for people to kind of just meet and be, rather than I just want it to be a place where people that can be. And yeah, more things in the library of stuff, library of things, more items. I'm keen to grow that as we go. So there's a form on our website that people can suggest items. Somebody recently wanted a gazebo. I thought it'd be a great item to have. So yeah, added that to the inventory. Just bigger everything.
Awesome. One quick last one there. William's asking, do you need any volunteers, and would you be interested in sharing volunteering opportunities with Micro Rainbow, which is a housing and support organization for LGBTQ and asylum seekers?
Oh wow. I'm not hiring any volunteers at the moment, and the idea would be to kind of hire people in paid roles. But that's definitely an interesting thing to think about. It seems like a really good cause, and possibly we could donate money as part of our kind of social enterprise. That would be something. Yeah, I'll have a look at that.
Awesome. Well, let me just say a big thanks for the talk. And it's really great to see that there's still these community-backed initiatives, and they're doing really well. I loved the can idea. It's brilliant. I saw that tweet. That was really good. But yes, thanks again for sort of joining us on Brum Tech Tapas.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, so last but not least, I'd like to welcome the founder and director of CX Squared, that's Dan Hoff Rodriguez. Many of us who work in the tech will know Dan because of CX Squared, or they are one of the region's influential tech recruitment companies. They've been really community focused. So tonight he's here to talk about jobs. He's not here to talk about jobs, but it's to share his thoughts on diversity, culture, and how our life experience define us.
Thanks for the intro, Dan. And I'm here definitely not to talk about jobs, just so people know. So I'm going to crack on. I'm assuming everyone can see my screen. So my name is Dan Hoff Rodriguez, and I'm the founder of, I'm a few things in the city and region, but I'll keep things as brief as possible. In 2019, I founded a tech talent solutions business called CX Squared. We describe ourselves as culture first and community focused. What does that mean, you say? He's just a recruiter. Well, actually, yes, that is part of what we do, but we are a full service talent partner to high growth tech businesses that want to showcase their stories, their purpose, develop their culture, promote diversity, and show off their employer brand in order to not only attract talent, but obviously retain, keep, and engage. I'm also the director of a community interest company called the Brum Muse. It's a movement created to solve 3 core problems within the digital skills gap by working with schools, digital poverty, and empowering everyone, regardless of background, race, religion, gender, and an opportunity to really pursue a career in tech and digital. And finally, I'm the face of the newly trademarked The Recruitment Doctor YouTube channel, where I don't hold back in helping people get jobs, giving them good advice and telling employers how to get real in order to retain and hire talent. I'd like to describe myself as someone who's a collaborator and an enabler, but rather than list more objectives, I'm a doman, aka a human that does. I'm someone that is wanting to take action whatever I do, and ensuring we can effect change for the better for everyone. But I'm going to rewind a little bit because my desire to change an industry like recruitment was not shaped by my dislike of an industry I worked in for over 9 years before 2019, or my hunger to help bridge the digital skills gap. It was shaped in my years of growing up, my upbringing, and sort of 6 life experiences I'm going to talk to you about that have effectively shaped who I am up to now. And there are some things I'm going to share with you today that I haven't shared with anyone except my wife. So do bear with me. So where to start? want to highlight these life experiences that have contributed and defined my purpose, my values, my vision, my culture, and ultimately my story. And let's be honest, we all have one. These life experiences will come across both negative and positive. So try and look at them from every angle, because where there is a negative, there's always a positive outcome. And from a positive outcome, there's always a positive one as well. So life experience one, my family and my history. I was born in London in 1986, and the 80s was a real decade of change and purpose for many families who had emigrated from across the world from the 70s and 60s to give their next generation and children a better future. And this was certainly the case for my dad, who had left Nairobi, Kenya at the age of 21 in 1976, where he left his family and 4 siblings behind to travel to London with no job, no formal education, no degree, to ultimately make a life for himself. My mum was already in London. She'd moved when she was 5 years old, also from Nairobi, Kenya, whom also wanted to give her a better life than what was available at the time. And when we talk about immigrants, like my grandparents were born in Goa in India. That's what these pictures are about, by the way. And in India, like many Indians at the time, there's not much work, and therefore they immigrate themselves and their children to Africa, which was the case for a lot of Indian families. Early years for me, school was pretty normal. And my parents were devoted Catholics, so we went to church every Sunday. If we didn't sing, we were nudged. And we would obviously never miss mass. And this is when my dislike for conformity started. I used to go to church and count how many pages were left in the mass book just to see if time would go quicker. And being a Catholic, family, of course, I went to a Catholic primary school where we had a strong Irish community, and many of my friends still today, they're all white, and race nor the colour of my skin, which obviously is reflecting that picture, were ever questioned. In fact, my parents never really talked to me about racism, which was a shame, because if they'd told me about what they experienced in the past, and maybe talked to me about the colour of my skin, this could have been a factor. But hold that thought as we get into life experience too. But when I got to secondary school, went to a boys' Catholic, nothing special, just a normal comp in Greater London. And that's Harrow in the top right, where I was brought up. The school for me was pretty cool. I wasn't what I would call the brightest student. In fact, I started to resent school because the pressure put on to me by my parents was so intense. I didn't, really have the buy-in to the process. So you want me to do well at school? Well, why? I didn't get it. It wasn't sold to me in a way that I was brought into wanting to do well. So it wasn't that I wasn't intelligent. My teachers still taught everyone the same way. So I didn't understand maths the same way other kids would. Algebra, would I need to walk down the street and crack some equations to get into the local pub? Will I need to recite the law of gravity to catch the train? All these things were not sold to me in a way I could understand. And I was told that I had to get A's because I had to go and study law or to be a doctor, and ultimately compete against my cousin because he had better grades than me. But I didn't want to be these people. I just wanted to be happy, have a childhood, have fun, be me. And I felt cornered. I felt lonely. And when my friends were going out, going to parties at 15 and 16, I wasn't allowed. I was the eldest son. I was told I had to set an example to my younger sister, to my 4 cousins who were younger. I was the oldest in the family, so I had to conform. And then we get into life experience too, that thing called racism. In secondary school, there was this one kid, didn't like me for some reason, and one day on the way to the bus, he called me the P word. Now, you know what? Looking back on it, apart from being factually incorrect, because I am actually of Indian heritage, I reacted badly. I ran after him and, reacted badly. My reaction was wrong, but no one told me how to react. It was just don't react. And when I got home, my parents told me to turn the other cheek. And if any of you know the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 38 to 40, eye for an eye. Let's be frank, when you're young, not brought into religion, it's not hardly something you want to be, recited to. And that had was my first experience of racism. And then came college and ladies, and I was told by my dad to focus on my studies and not girls. And well, what a terrible thing to tell me, because of course I'm going to do the opposite thing, because I didn't want to be told what to do and have my life dictated to. And I started seeing a girl from Stevenage, but at the time it wasn't the most diverse town in England. And I stared at a lot, went up there, and on the train home one day had another incident. I won't go into the details. And in the town next to Harrow was out, and some Asian lads shouted from the car, date someone your own colour. So all these experiences were starting to implode on me. You know, the innocent little boy who was protected from racism, largely because my folks chose not to share those stories with me, was starting to have their own effect on me. But roll on 35 years, I've probably experienced racism about 10 times. Don't get me wrong, is it nice? It's in fact pretty crap. But if you let those people scare you off for sheer ignorance, where would I be in life? I take that hate, channel it, and keep doing you. And having lived in cities, including Bristol, Oxford, and now Birmingham, I feel safer than I have for a while. But let's not shy away from the fact that it still happens, and a lot of people, you know, a lot more than people really realise. Life experience 3. My dad, as you probably caught me, I've mentioned him a few times. My relationship with my father is pretty edgy. We don't see eye to eye, and 35 years on, we still don't. Having done 3 years at the Uni of Hertfordshire studying law, I loved uni, met great people. I decided to go on and do my legal practice course, and that was largely because I felt I had to. And I got into Oxford. I'll jump into Oxford in a little bit, but ultimately Oxford was the place where I finally got the balls to tell him I wasn't going to go into law, but pursue a career in recruitment, and was moving to Bristol. And as you can imagine, that went down like a massive bag of sick. And I don't know if anyone has ever seen it or maybe experienced it or even done it, but when someone asks a child, or, you know, asks your child a question and parents answers on their behalf, you know, we've all seen it. I was that child. Like, my dad wanted to live the life he wanted to have, which is cool. But in hindsight, I get it. And, you know, I didn't get it when I was a child. And that was the biggest thing. It made me feel pretty small, pretty angry. And it made me want to push back. I wanted to be a footballer when I was younger. My dad didn't know. Like a lot of Indian families, they wanted their children to be doctors, dentists, lawyers, bankers. I know my dad doesn't mean it. And in fact, he doesn't really show emotion, which was reflected in me growing up. But what I have learned now is showing emotion and your human side has been a key to my success in business, but also in raising a family, and which obviously I'll come on to later. And this takes me on to my life experience 4, which is Oxford and coaching women's football. I was the last class to have been able to have graduated at the Sheldonian. If you don't know it, it's where all Oxford University graduates graduate. So it was a real honour for me, even though I got a terrible grade. Oxford, incredible city. In fact, that city really helped me grow up a lot. What a lot of people don't know is that I used to be an FA Level 2 qualified football coach. I coached the Oxford University women's football team and took them to back-to-back winning varsity championships against Cambridge. And it's where I learned how to become a leader to different people, to motivate players individually rather than as one. And it's where a lot of leaders go wrong, trying to manage everyone like a pack of sheep rather than managing each individual as a shepherd and empowering them in their own right. And as I said, Oxford made me grow up, and it was a city which made me hate privilege, but it also made me also respect it. I'm going to just quickly go on to my life experience 5, losing someone who you need in your life always. So in 2014, 2 things would completely change the way I looked on life. 2 people I've not spoken about is my dad's dad, Pedro, and my mother's mum, Rita Maria. These are 2 people who were always on the periphery. They knew what was going on, but they didn't necessarily get involved. But were the people in my lives that had my back, you know, and I think ultimately they were my role models. And it's a shame, because have you ever heard the phrase too little too late? When they passed within months of each other, I lost the 2 people who got me, and they are the biggest they are my biggest life experience, because their words, their hugs, their looks are the ones that I only understand now. And now it is too little too late. Our people, our next gen, our children, they need role models, and those 2 people have given me so much desire to ensure that people don't feel too little too late, that sometimes I actually feel sad, which you're probably seeing right now. Everyone deserves the chance, regardless of those errors, their privileges, their backgrounds, and those 2 people are my foundations of what I aspire to be, and you know, what I seek to achieve. And this takes me on to life experience 3. And what you can see on your screen, by the way, is, I'm sure you've all seen it, Man on Fire. I saw it in 2004 when it first came out. And I don't know if you've seen this episode where he speaks to the teacher, and he says, "I am the sheep that got lost." You know, I saw so much in me in that, except for the fact that I didn't obviously shoot people. But conformity and restriction prevents imagination, and that's why I hate conformity. So life experience 6, push back, but evaluate. When I was told not to do something or to play it safe or follow a career in something, I would rebel and do the opposite. And if someone told me I couldn't do something, I would prove them wrong. And this takes me nicely into where I am now. My company, CX2, is culture first, because the life experiences that define me. And when I told close friends and family I was going to go and do this and create a tech recruitment business that put culture and people first, I was told, well, why change something that's not that already works? It's not going to last. I've taken deep pride in seeking to innovate and disrupt an industry like recruitment and talent, not to prove people wrong, but to show that innovation can be done all the time. And whilst you don't need to change something that isn't broken, you can certainly improve it. So when people tell you no, acknowledge it, nod, and crack and carry right on. And finally, family to me is everything. This is my family. I have a pretty, as I said, odd relationship with my dad, and he's actually given me the power and the lessons that have allowed me to touch wood, be a good father to my three children. And what he has done, he has shaped me for who I am now, because I've questioned things and I was curious. And now I want my kids to question me and be curious. And it doesn't stop there. I want my team at CX2 to question things and be curious. And when we start hiring for the next gen of future tech talent, I want them to question things and be curious for all my clients. My last name is now Hoff Rodriguez. My wife's a feminist. One of my daughter's middle names is Carlo, after the incredible Frida Kahlo. We do things equal in our house, and tradition is not a word I care about. When we got married, I took her name, she took mine. We are equals because we want our children to know the importance of equals. Name, race, religion, gender, sexuality shouldn't matter. We're equal, we are human. Ultimately, empowerment, enablement, every child's present from a parent or guardian. I want them to be free. I want them to be whatever they want to be, but they need to have a role model or role models. Your story can be defined by any life experience or wanting to change an experience. And this is why we encourage employers, hiring managers and talent to embrace their values, showcase culture and shout about their employer brand. And so having a story and purpose shows a vulnerable side, but it also shows a human side. And there's no different to the culture I've created at home to what culture I've shared in my workplace. And as long as there's enablement and your people feel empowerment, they will flourish. And this is applied to my kids. Your culture is defined by your purpose, your values, your story, but more important, your people. And this is applied in everything I do, work, home, and everything and beyond. And that's me.
Thanks for that, Dan. Really nice to hear there's such a personal sort of talk there. And some of those life experiences you mentioned, I mean, yeah, really do stand out, don't they? I know we've got a couple of questions that I'd like to sort of put to you, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course.
Do you find it difficult to find books and resources for children that are representative of your son or children? If not, how do you tackle that? That's from Ebony.
No, I don't. My missus is hot on the press with stuff like this. Like, we've got anti-racism books. We've got a book called Anti-Racism Baby. I think when we talk about racism, I actually think it's more important to focus on anti-racism more so, and actually there's a lot of material out there. If you put it into Google, there's unbelievable books for kids, and our kids' bookshelves are full of them already. And it's always around them as a human, not them as mixed heritage family. It's them as a person, and we want them to respect people as people.
Have we got one more question? So do you think that teachers should be provided with awareness training in these matters in order to assist parents and children?
Yes and no. I mean, let's be frank. I mean, I think teachers have got it tough as it is, and I think they are undervalued. I've just become PTA chair for my kids' primary school, and I think I made that decision as more of someone that I felt like I could bring the community together. So if the community is talking, then I don't feel that. I think we can work together on these issues. But I think that the resources and the structure and the system that we've got in place in this country for our kids is tough as it is for teachers. But if they can make the time for other institutions to come in and teach PE and do that sort of stuff, then maybe there is scope. But I think we've got a long way to go with our education system.
We've got time for one more. I see one just coming from Ebony there. What advice would you give to your younger self if you could travel back in time?
Yeah, don't be a dickhead. Is this a yeah? Sorry, excuse the French. Yeah, look, that's my mantra at work. Is literally don't be a DH. You know, ultimately we're all humans. We can all have a bad day. I took things a lot personally when I was younger, and I think it's because my dad wasn't very expressive with those emotions, which I touched on, and I think ultimately that's why we try to really empower our kids to be as, you know, communicative about those emotions. And I've actually got so good with those emotions that, you know, I can actually express it like all the time, which I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but you know, I think it is a good thing. But ultimately, yeah, that's what I would, my advice would be, just don't bottle it in. Would have been my advice.
And if you'd gone down the football career, what position would you have gone for, or would you like to play?
I always played on the right wing or the left wing. So now I don't think I could run for longer than 5 minutes. So you know, football coaching is great because you could just stand there.
Oh, excellent. Well, like I said, thanks again for coming on and really kind of giving that like nice personal talk. Is really eye-opening, and definitely to see the effects it had, you know, all the way through your life. So thanks again for that.
Cheers, guys. Thanks for this.
So I guess, you know, that's the end of the third event. I just want to say a huge thanks to all the speakers for you know, the talks they did tonight. Also, you know, again, a huge thanks to everyone who tuned in to watch, and you know, the questions you asked and everything like that just really means a lot to us. And also, you know, as we always talk about, this isn't just about us, it's about the community. So please spread the word. You know, if you've got, you know, anyone, you know, any ideas for anyone who might want to give a talk, or, you know, if there's anything that you think perhaps we should go and talk to people about coming on and giving some kind of talk at the event, then please do get in touch with us. You know, we have Twitter, Instagram, or, you know, there's the email on the website. And also, you know, don't forget to sort of tag us in any of the tweets with the hashtag Brum Tech Tapas. If you know of any kind of events that are coming up that perhaps people, you know, should be made aware of, please do let us know. We're actually hoping that our next event is going to be an in-person event. It's going to be in January 2022. So look out for that date. We'll be tweeting about it and sort of putting it on our website and everything. And, you know, don't forget, there's also plenty of other great events going on in Birmingham right now. A big one next month, Fusion. It's one of the best events that get put on every quarter. It's going to be it's a hybrid event, so there's going to be some in person and remote. So, you know, if you're looking to get to see some really good speakers and things like that, don't forget to grab a ticket. They're on sale now, and that's on October the 14th. And again, just on behalf of all of us here, you know, the Brum Tech Tapas team, we want to say a big thanks for sort of tuning in, and the speakers, and for everyone joining us tonight. Thanks all.